Thank you very much for being here. Since the dawn of societies, Since the dawn of society, ledgers have been a key component on the development of civilization. The Ishango bone, for instance, was a tool that is believed to be one of the first ledgers. This bone has a set of markings on it that are appearing not to be random, which led some archaeologists to believe that this is a counting tool. It wasn't until 5,000 years ago that Mesopotamian people started using clay tablets to actually record transactions. What happens is that they were using a specific format to do this. They would use something similar to a spreadsheet. They would have columns and rows, and each one of these cells would be represented by an image that would be representing what was being transferred, and a set of holes that would just be saying how many quantities would be traded. Thanks to this format, they could easily do subtotals and totals to easily validate those transactions. And thanks to the use of signatures and cylinder seals that they would roll on top of this, they would have the first forms of identity. They would be able to authenticate that those clay tablets were correct, were valid, and that they were maybe some official that has authorized that transaction. As civilization evolved, we needed to keep track of smaller transactions. One way to do this was through the use of split tollisticks. That was in the Middle Ages. Split tollisticks were basically a wooden stick that someone would mark some notches on them, and then they would be split in half, so that both parties on a transaction would be able to keep that stick and then validate that that hadn't been tampered by. You could easily check that the surface, the imperfections of the surface, and then the notches hadn't been changed. So this allowed for people to track how and verify if a transaction was actually correct. This kept evolving until we got double entry ledgers, which allowed for people to easily register credit and debit, what actually allowed people to get access to finance. This allowed people to have standard ways of accountability, which allowed investors, lenders, to actually understand what the correct valuation was for a business, and therefore it was one of the key principal components of capitalism. This easily simplified trade, as from now, people could be using numbers, not commodities. As we continued moving on, we see that civilization has moved from clay to paper, going through wood and clay. Now, the invention of computers, however, created a completely new medium to do this. This new medium, we're all aware of how it actually affected society. However, the internet is not a perfect medium to store information. The internet is stateless. It doesn't remember things, right? When I search for something on Google, it doesn't remember what I've searched. It just allows me to query and ask a server for that information. So the internet is a perfect tool to transfer text, sound, video, all these things. But it doesn't allow me to store anything. If I buy a concert ticket, what's happening is that I'm receiving an email, but this email is just a representation of this ticket, and if I send it to someone else, because I've sold it, for instance, I'm just forwarding this email. Now this person has a copy of the concert ticket, but I still have mine. Nothing enforces me to delete the concert ticket, so this concert ticket hasn't been transferred, just copied to someone else. Blockchain technology completely changes this. For the first time, we have a medium where we can store information, and we can just trust the medium itself. We don't need any third party to be relying upon to be able to validate those transactions. And this actually means that for the first time, we can transfer ownership of assets over the internet. This is a very big deal. This basically means that if we go back to the example of the concert ticket, when I send it to someone, everyone in the world knows that I don't have access to it anymore. And this will be one of the key factors in the upcoming changes of society. Now, this is something that traditionally that traditionally has only been considered for the private sector. We don't agree. We think that the best implications of this technology will actually be in the public sector. There are many components where it will be a big change, since now we can easily decrease administrative costs, we can increase efficiency, we can streamline commerce, we can create new economic opportunity, and we can reduce fraud. All of this at the hands of anyone that wants to use it. Now, small cities, councils, regions, countries can use this technology at a very low cost. My name is Libre Castellana. I am the Chief Product Officer at Radix, which is the first truly scalable and easy-to-use distributed ledger technology that is ready to scale to billions of people. Now, digital currencies have been around for a very long time. We can think of obvious points, for instance. Obvious points can be earned, can be spent, can be sold. I can change them for clothes, for food, for flights, and it's something that has a stable value and can actually be accepted in many different places. So it is pretty much a currency, although we're not really thinking of them as currencies. Then came Bitcoin. Bitcoin was a similar idea, but in this case, there was no company behind it. It was volatile in value, and some people dismissed it because they thought that it was a toy for drug dealers and black market participants. However, as of today, it is already surpassing the transaction volume that PayPal has. This is not just the currency, but the technology that it brought with us is what we're going to be talking about this week, and it's going to be one of the most fundamental changes that we'll see in society. It will be powered by this technology. Now, even Facebook is throwing its hat into the ring. Project Libre is a project that's trying to create a new global currency. A currency where anyone can actually hold these assets without having a bank account, where anyone can send these assets globally, instantly, with their cell phones. This all without having the backing of any government, which is a very big change. But there's even more. This technology allows us to this technology is directly programmable. Means I can put rules every time that I send an asset. This will lower cost, and this is actually accessible by anyone, anywhere. So it's a currency that is cryptographically secure, redundantly backed up, and that can be instantly global. One that even the unbanked or the underprivileged can make use of and benefit from. However, Facebook Libre can only allow for 1,000 transactions a second. This is not enough. In a world where Facebook right now has 2.5 billion users, and where Visa on something like Black Friday can have to do about 50,000 transactions a second, 1,000 transactions a second is not enough. This is what we're solving. Radix is focused on solving scalability. And we demonstrated this on the 3rd of July, 2019, by achieving 1.4 million transactions a second, running the entire Bitcoin ledger, 10 years of it, in 7 minutes. Now, think about it from a government standpoint. Facebook has shown it's super powerful to use this type of technology. But this is not only available to Silicon Valley. What we're dealing with here is open source technology that can be used by anyone, any government, for instance, right? And it's very cheap to use. Radix allows governments to create their own versions of Libre, but rather than being issued by a company or a private corporation, can be issued by governments, backed by the balance sheets of the governments. Imagine international trade deals clearing in seconds, import levies being paid programmatically, interbank settlement with no counterparty risk. This technology is not just about currency. As most of the things with nationality and with sovereignty, it starts with identity. Identity theft and fraud cost the UK government £5.4 billion a year due to identity theft and fraud. The reason for this is that they rely on physical security to issue these identities and to validate these identities. This is not enough. With technology platforms such as Radix, this is no longer an issue. Governments can issue unforgeable identities that can be validated by anyone in less than a second and from a mobile phone. This is especially important as with this type of technology, you don't have to release your information to the public domain. If I go to the bouncer on the concert, maybe he needs to see my ID. Why does he need to see where I live? That's not necessary. Now, with this technology, he can just query this ledger to see if my age is enough to be able to access the concert without seeing any other information. Once identity is cryptographically secure, it can be used from everything, from paying for paying welfare directly to its recipients, to authenticating to government applications, reducing tax evasion, tracking public biddings, granting access to specific benefits, and many, many more. With secure identity, you now have secure voting. One citizen, one vote. Verifiable, auditable, and unchangeable. Now, we're going to go through one of the, we've seen how much impact this technology can have, right? But this is not just theory. There are currently 207 initiatives worldwide working on this. This is actually not even complete. This is a list made by the Illinois Blockchain Initiative that lists these initiatives. I am aware of many others that are not being accounted for in here. If we look at this, we see that Netherlands, USA, and UK are leading this list, right? But if we look a bit closer, we'll see that, contrary to what we may be expecting, the majority of these projects are around government services, almost doubling what is being done on financial services and being 10 times more than what is happening right now on IoT and real estate. Most of them, however, are still very early. As we can see, only 5.5% of these projects are actually live. Most of them are in incubation, are in early research, or are in proof of concept stage. But this is not something unexpected, I guess. This technology has been out there for 10 years, and up until 3 to 5 years ago, governments were not really even looking into it. Now, there is a lot to be done, but there's a lot of opportunities in the future, and we're here to try to tackle them. I would really like to thank you all for being here. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm glad to see that there's so much interest on the use of this technology to improve the life of so many, many people. Thank you very much.